And I apologize because I have a lot to remember, a lot of announcements for tonight, so I'm going to be reading them off. But first of all, I would like to welcome everybody to the VEX Ed Webinar series presented by the Visitor Experience Group, or VEX. Before we get started, if you would like to enable closed captioning, there is a button at the bottom of your screen, as you can see there on the presentation. You can click that and closed captions should pop up. My name is Patrick Whitwer. I am one of the vice presidents of the Visitor Experience Group. VEX was founded in 2012 to address a major gap in professional development for folks who work in cultural institutions, specifically the folks who interact with the people who visit our institutions. We're so grateful that you've all decided to join us tonight for this webinar focused on your mental health and well-being. Before we dive in, I just have a few announcements that I'm going to get to. And first is that we are very excited to present the 10th Annual Visitor Experience Conference this October. With the uncertainty of vaccine rollout, our significantly reduced museum budgets across the field, and the fact that frontline departments in our industry have been hit pretty hard by layoffs and furloughs, we have decided that this year's conference would be best served as a fully online experience, just like last year. The team here at VEX is already hard at work at looking for ways to build on last year's online experience for a more dynamic and engaging conference. And with that, we do hope to be back in person in 2022 in Cleveland. But on the subject of the team here at VEX, we are currently looking to expand. Our small core team of volunteers are proud of the work we've done since 2012, growing from a modest half-day meeting in a classroom in the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia to a full-fledged nonprofit organization serving audiences in a variety of countries around the globe. We're currently accepting applications for board members, committee members, and ambassadors to help us move forward and grow. We have another event coming up 1 month from tonight on Tuesday, March 23rd. Join us for an evening of fun at our first Show and Share event. Show and Tell meets a talent show in this fun evening of sharing our unique skills and cool collections during a fun-filled online happy hour. Fun begins at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we hope to see you there. And this event is free. For more information on the 2021 Visitor Experience Conference or joining our team, or to join us for Show and Share next month, you can visit our website at visitorexperience.group. With that, on to tonight's main event. Throughout the evening, if you have questions, please send them in a direct chat to me, and I will ask the questions at the end of the talk. We are joined tonight by Dr. Andrea Mechanic-Braverman. Dr. Braverman is a clinical professor with a joint appointment in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology and in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. Dr. Braverman is the Associate Director for the Educational Core for OBGYN and also serves as Director of the College Learning Environment for the university. She's a health psychologist with a specialty in medical health management, infertility counseling, and third-party reproduction issues. She received her MA, MS, and PhD in psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Braverman has lectured internationally before medical and patient audiences and conducted research and published numerous articles in medical journals. She received the Timothy Jeffries Memorial Award in 2011 for outstanding contributions as a health psychologist from the American Psychological Association and the Advocacy Award from the Family Equality Council and Path to Parenthood in 2018. She's the past president of the North American Society for Psychosocial Obstetrics and Gynecology and past chairperson of the Mental Health Professional Group of the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. And somehow, with all of that, she still finds the time to be the best mother-in-law a guy could ask for and has spent a considerable amount of her very little free time these last few months helping my wife and I transform our basement. So with that, Dr. Braverman, thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Pat. And I love that you had to call me Dr. Braverman tonight and get all formal on me. So it is just such a pleasure to be here tonight with you. And, I'm going to share with you not so much anything from my fertility world and Department of OBGYN world, but more, something that's affected all of us, which is the 2020, and even as we march into 2021, miraculously, it did not just disappear, although that has been promised to us before. So 2 things. One is you saw my picture pre-COVID when I was a redhead. We're leaning into the gray now, which I think is really an apt metaphor for like what we're all experiencing now. And the other is because I am on the computer all day long, I now wear my computer and reader glasses. Thank you, 2020. But I am going to share my screen now with you and get my presentation up so you don't have to look at me, although we can have a vote on whether I should go back to being a redhead again. I haven't decided. So let's change this to a presentation mode, and here we go. Is that hopefully just seeing my slide and not all of it, but
Seeing all.
you're seeing all of it. How do I do that? Well, let's end the show for a second. And let's see if we do it as slideshow, whether that will be better. No, still doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So you can see whether you want to go out and get something to drink if you look at the next slide. So what are we going to talk about? Well, this was not the version I saved. Oh, well, we're going to talk about, a number of things. One is sort of COVID and what happened and, why some of the things I'm going to talk to you about in terms of handling things is so helpful. So, for example, what I'd really like to do is say, think back for a second for everybody. What did last year, what were the challenges presented to you? It's interesting in my professional life, if you were to come to me and come to me for therapy or counseling, one of the things that was always true was your life was your life, mine was mine. The stresses we had were often very different. And although I would help you, it wasn't a direct, the, what your experience is my experience, and it follows me out in a different way. What's different about 2020? We were all experiencing many of the same challenges. So from COVID and being locked down, and can you believe we're almost at a year, to suddenly for many of you being either unemployed, furloughed, or seeing the world that you work in suddenly almost closed to you because of how devastating this was to the museum world, to other things, being separated from friends and family, and all the things that we normally would do. I always said all the tools I would use in therapy were like, oh wait, can't do that. All right, let's talk about self-care. Why don't you go out for a walk? Remember the first 2 days, the first 2 weeks of of COVID? Like, don't leave your house. How about, other things like, if you like massage, maybe I'm going to treat myself to a massage. There's always a Groupon for that, right? Except, oh, right, you can't go for a massage. Read a book, okay, unless it's delivered to your front door, that's not going to happen. Other things we could do, that we could manage, but a lot of what we do, social interaction, which is the thing that we need as human beings to keep us going, even if you tend to be a very private person, a reclusive person. There is still, just even when you go out for a coffee in the morning, you stop into the Wawa or the bougie coffee place that you like. There's that, how are you doing? Chat about the weather, things like that, were suddenly just, had been unalterably changed, and we were all very, very isolated. Um, one of the things, the tools that we use is something called mindfulness. I am assuming that most people have at least heard of mindfulness. You can't kind of swing a stick at the around you and look for anything that's been written without coming across mindfulness. But one of the tools that was still left to us was mindfulness during all of this. Most people are like, okay, that sounds great. Mindfulness, I'll get the t-shirt. But what the heck is it? So one of the reasons why it was a useful tool for us was it took us into being in the moment. So let's talk about that. What is mindfulness? You knew I made slides for a reason, right? So what is mindfulness? Well, it's not a religious or other belief system. It's something that we acquire, and it's simple, but it's definitely not easy. Anybody ever have the experience of driving along and then all of a sudden you realize, you're 5 minutes down the road and you have no recollection of the last 5 minutes driving, or what's felt like 5 minutes? It's usually under a minute, but it feels like a long time. We're lost in our head. Ever, this is my least favorite experience. Ever have that experience? Like, I sit down for dessert. I love dessert. I will always love dessert. And I sit down and all of a sudden I'm eating my dessert. And the next thing I know, the dessert is gone and I really didn't ever taste it. Like, I was so busy thinking about something, or quite frankly, and full disclosure, I've watched TV. I've enjoyed it somewhat, but if I turned off the TV and actually paid attention to what I was eating, it would probably be a different experience, right? So, all right, you're going to be like that. Let's see. No, it does like to do that sometimes. All right, we'll go the old fashioned way. So, what is it? Mindfulness is really about awareness. It's, and here's the piece in every step. This is much more of the fancy way of talking about, being aware when you're breathing in and being aware when you're breathing out. Not something we do every minute, every day. Quite frankly, people start to hyperventilate and then they worry they're having a panic attack. But it is shifting that focus, being aware of what is here. And what they go on to say is that it can be an object of mindfulness. It can just be your breath. It can be the sky. It is to be in touch with our felt experience in each moment. That was still available to us and still remains available to us. But how is that helpful? Well, it's about paying attention. It's being purposeful in that attention. I'm choosing if I'm going outside. I don't know if anybody went out in the snow. If you like the snow, like that purposeful paying attention to what does the snow look like? We all know that every snowflake is different. It's not that kind of paying attention. That's a little bit challenging to do. But the idea that every snowstorm is different. Think about the ones that we just had yesterday. It was beautiful snow until it was not, and then it was like slush and then rain. Um, but it's allowing yourself to be present and not to judge. Ever get through a day without a judgment? Because if you did, bless. Share your secret with everybody else. And who do we usually judge every day? It's not others, it's usually us. We can get better about not judging others. We say, I'm not going to be judgy today, but we don't usually direct it toward ourselves. And I think that's one of the beauties about thinking about mindfulness as just one tool for mental health, and to be present in the moment and not what we're all doing, which is, okay, when am I getting my vaccine? What will that mean? Does it mean that if I get my vaccine, I can actually see friends, family? Can I eat indoors? Can I not eat indoors? What does it mean? Who do I trust? And the next thing you know, you are anywhere but present. And particularly remember this when we are allowed to get together with others. Wouldn't it be nice to actually be with them instead of going back to old habits of being anywhere? But this is a quote from John Kabat-Zinn. He is sort of the guru and the founder of mindfulness. And if this is something you want to explore further, I do recommend looking at some of his writings. But here's another definition. This is Jack Kornfield saying mindfulness is to distinguish awareness from mental activity. It's to be aware of our own mental states without being caught in them. So I can have a lot of mental activity. I can be in my head and thinking about anything, about all the things I have to do tomorrow, but I'm not aware of anything going on around me, and I am just removed. And that's true just even when we are feeling down. We tend to focus all on our thoughts, or anxious, because anxious is just an absolute tsunami of thoughts, right? And in that we lose touch with what's going on in our everyday world. So what's the solution? One of the things that mindfulness suggests is shifting to acceptance of what's going on, including impermanence. If you are not working at the moment, or you're underemployed, or even thinking of switching careers, it's saying, okay, that's this moment, but not that catastrophizing that we all tend to do, of saying this is forever. I was just having this discussion actually with one of my patients who's pregnant, which should not be a shock to you because you all hear about what I do. And she is having a very complicated pregnancy after a long infertility journey and finally is pregnant. But of course, it couldn't be an easy road. It's a complicated road. So why am I telling you this story? One of the things we were talking about was all she can think about is all the things that might happen. What if I have this complication? I start to bleed and I have to go to the emergency room. Did I mention this is a very anxious lady? Everything's about anxiety. And if I go to the emergency room, what if I get exposed to COVID? And if I get COVID, what does this mean? And before you know it, she's got herself 6 feet under or toes up because all of these things that haven't happened in her head have begun to happen. That's anxiety, right? We don't stay present in the moment. We don't accept that for her, her situation is anything can change. Great thing about pregnancy is that things can look really bad at one point of her case where her placenta is. This is not an uncommon thing, but it can shift. 4 weeks later, when we go to scan, it's like, look, it moved. The miracle of life, right? And so then to be able to accept, I don't know, this isn't permanent. Things may change. They could change for the better. They might change for the worse. It's letting go of attachments. We get so attached to saying I've different the way we approach things. I mean, look, I love control. I am, unfortunately, both my daughters, sorry, Pat, love control. We love file folders. We love color coding. Why? It helps deal with, it's good for organization, but it's also a good way of managing to keep anxiety at bay, right? I know where everything is. I mean, tonight I actually had updated some of these slides and I don't know what version. Clearly, I did not pull up the updated one. This is the older one. Oh, well, it's, how do you accept impermanence? It's like, okay, it'll be a little bit uncomfortable at the beginning because I had such a great few slides to show you. But you know what? It'll pass. We can accept that. So things don't have to go the way we do, but we want them to all the time. But it doesn't mean that we can't shift with it. I always I love some countries that say, they will say, hey, as far as our weather, wait 5 minutes and it'll shift again. Some states also will say that too. That's sort of an acceptance of, weather won't always be like this. Letting go of that attachment of every day is sunny in Philadelphia. Is it? Staying present, living in our bodies and not in our heads. One of the things, and I'll do a cheat sheet for you guys. So here's cheap therapy, guys. One of the things that, I'll have people do if they're really having a hard time staying out of their heads is I will have them, like if you're working online next to you, have your fidget next to you, whatever fidget bit you like, worry beads, I don't care. If you know you're going to get super anxious, how do you get out of your head and into your body? Sometimes I'll have people have a bowl of ice cubes next to them. Pick up the ice cube. It will shift your focus out of your head and into your body. That's cold. And it actually gets to be not terribly pleasant, right? So, and I don't want you to be in pain, but for somebody, it's like focus on that feeling of that ice cube. Do you feel the water dripping between your fingers? I'm working with somebody right now who's in HR and gets very, very anxious when has to talk in front of people. Well, put everybody into a pandemic situation. That's all we are is online and talking in front of people. And so what used to be bothersome has really gotten out of control. So we use the ice cube trick. We also use a very quick technique, which I may have further on in my slides, but I want to talk about it now, is what I call calling BS on yourself, breath and shoulders for everybody. If you just stop for a minute, take your shoulders, put them down. When I'm stressed, where are my shoulders? They're up, right? I'm clenching them up. I'm not even aware of it half the time. And I put them down, I open up my chest, and I stop and think for a minute. So if you're doing this, how does that feel? For most people, it feels good. It feels good to open your chest. I don't mean like, stretch and do whatever like some gym meister will do to you, but just opening and gently feeling like, oh, I'm open and I'm not signaling to my body I am stressed and unhappy and hunched. And then take a breath. You breathe in, filling your lungs, your chest. You can feel it in your body and you let it out. And with that, as you see my shoulders go down, it's like everything's mirroring what we want to try to achieve. And BS, calling BS on yourself is my adorable way of saying, instead of bullshit, it means breath and shoulders. So, how adorable is that? But, it's a good reminder to say in any moment when you're just worrying and worrying and worrying, stop for a minute, do a body check. Where are my shoulders? And can I just give myself that gift for a moment of getting out of my head and into my body? I do this with my OBGYN residents all the time. And I always tell them, I don't care how busy you are, maybe not when you're actually catching a baby, but or in the middle of surgery, but otherwise you can always, when you're right before you walk into a patient room, you can stop and call BS on yourself. Um, I, like everybody else, forget. And every once in a while, it's like, what are you doing? You're not doing what you tell everybody else to do. So do it for yourself. Nobody gets to achieve Olympic levels at this. We're always training for the next competition. And I guess the last point that I want to say, is this one: maintain a kind and friendly attitude toward ourselves as well as others. The it's interesting. I am old, so I watch the 6:30 news sometime. I'm sure none of you guys do, because I know all the ads are like for constipation and like all sorts of old people problems. But one of the things, if any of you do, the Lester Holt changed this year, and I noticed, and his sign off now is take care of yourselves and take care of others. And I thought, okay, buddy, you win my mindfulness, champion award, because I will probably write a fangirl letter, and probably leave out the fact that it's like, I think you're adorable, but we'll leave that out. Um, what is it that we are so hard on ourselves? The more stress, the more our mental health gets rockier, and as more and more things just grind us down, the less we are kind to ourselves as well as others. When I'm really tired, I don't want it. I drive into Jefferson once a week from the suburbs. And I will tell you of all the bad behavior of people who drive on the road. You all know it too, right? And so when I'm in a good place and somebody, once again, cuts into line in front of me, because clearly their life is more important than mine and their time is way more important than mine, I will have very negative thoughts, and they're not kind and friendly. It's like, you son of a gun. Like, who made you so important? If I'm in a good place, it's like, look, I don't know what kind of day you're having. Maybe, your heater just broke and you are so stressed out that the idea of how could I ever get that fixed, or you've been out of work. Somebody I talked to today, her biggest stress, even though she's going through infertility, is not the infertility. It's her husband, who was laid off for a second time and has now applied to 600 jobs and still has not gotten to really get interviewed. That's her biggest stress. If she, maybe that's the person who's butting into line. What a more pleasant day will I have if I can get into that kinder attitude of maybe they are just narcissistic jerks, but I'm not going to change that. I can lay on my horn, I can grimace, I can grind my teeth, but I'm not changing them. Even if I was able to tap them on the shoulder and say, that was a really, douchebag move that you just did, I'm not going to change who they are, right? But the only person who's going to be upset is me. I still remember having one of those aha moments, because I talk about this all the time. I do try to do it, but somebody had cut me off right around that merge at the zoo, and I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry, wrong story. I'm trying to merge in at that Montgomery Drive, right before the zoo entrance. And everybody, anybody went to kindergarten, what are we taught? You take turns. So I'm going to take my turn, and I'm signaling to go in and merge, and that's what we do. And this person, I just assumed was going to let me in, and I merged in, and they were clearly not going to let me merge in. Wasn't even aware of it. I just thought there was enough space and that I was just continuing and I look in the back, I look in my rearview mirror because what I like to do is give a little friendly wave and say hi, spread a little sunshine. And as I look into my mirror and I'm about to raise my hand, I realize they are yelling and gesticulating, and I'm like, what? I took my turn. What crime against humanity did I just commit? Was I being a jerk? Was I not? Yeah, it's like, no, everybody else was zippering into the to the line. And I was like, of course, what's my response? I get angry. And I'm like, I did nothing wrong. And how can you think that it's my fault and that I was the jerk? And all of a sudden it's like, stop it. I'm grinding my teeth. I'm like, this is not fun. And it just was like, let it go. Because what's really my kinder attitude toward this person was not, you're the worst human being that ever lived, but just saying, what was it in your life that brought you to this point, that letting a car merge in front of you as everybody else you saw merging, it elicited this such a violent response of emotions. So I got into work actually not angry and like losing my little mind. So, they're the foundations of mindfulness. If you've never done mindfulness, or if you're an advanced mindfulness practitioner, we can all relate to this. We don't judge, we're patient, we trust a little bit more. We're not striving. I'm going to be the best at mindfulness. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. We don't give levels of mindfulness and you're like, you are a gold belt mindfulness person. It's about accepting things like, I can't change anything. I can't change the pandemic. I can't change for a lot of my patients who are they are parents and they're home with kids. They're either homeschooling or they're home with toddlers and they haven't been able to get outside in weeks. I can't change that. I have to accept that and my frustration, just like they have to accept that for many of them, they worry about a year of children just not having the stimulation, the socialization, and all that. So this is the way it is, but they'll have a whole, all of their contemporaries, all of their peer group will have the same. It's about letting go and not holding on to things. And the beginner's mind. Anybody ever do yoga? I'm not a yoga person, but the beginner's mind is very much a yoga kind of approach. I like the thought of yoga. I just don't like the actual doing of yoga. So could you tell I played team sports as a kid? Anyway, the beginner's mind is the idea of saying it's going in and with that acceptance of just not having to be expert, that you're allowed to learn, you're allowed to be it is letting go of the expertise. I mean, it is a very American cultural thing that it's all about performance and achievement, but that's not the way it always is the best thing for us. So being aware, the serenity prayer, is that familiar to everybody? But what is it? In many ways, it's bringing us to the idea of mindfulness. So, how do we do it? You simplify it, notice what's happening in the room. Say yes and allow for the experience. Be curious, even when familiar experiences don't repeat. Become a witness to the experience. My way of putting it is, don't be afraid to run an experiment. Don't get caught in it. If it works, great, I learned something. If it didn't, okay, I learned that maybe that's not what I want to do next. And be compassionate. I think it's something that really last year we floated in and out of. We all wanted to be compassionate. We were compassionate for people who were losing jobs. We were compassionate for those that were ill or lost people, but it's maintaining that. It's trying to maintain that attitude of kindness, friendliness, and gentleness toward yourself and others. It doesn't take, it doesn't take anything more than that, and it shouldn't take a pandemic to teach us. Normally, if we were meeting in person, I would have you do an exercise, but I'm going to give you this as homework. What's the exercise? Next time you're in the kitchen, grab something. I usually, when I do this with groups, it's a Hershey's Kiss. But it can be a hard candy. It can be something, it could be a slice of orange. I don't care. But when you put it in your mouth, I don't want music playing. I don't want anything else. I want you to actually experience it. I'll take the Hershey's Kiss as an example because that's one of the reasons why I like it is, first of all, it does melt in your mouth, unlike the M&Ms. Don't pick an M&M. It's not supposed to melt in your mouth. Not, or it does melt in your mouth, not in your hands. I always get that one wrong. So pick something that you like and actually feel it. Feel the texture in your mouth. Don't do what we normally do. Hershey's Kiss, chomp, 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 gone. And I didn't really experience it. My favorite, for those of you who don't, anybody know what that is? It is a Cadbury egg. It has a hard shell coating. Inside is just chocolate of deliciousness. If I were doing this as a mindfulness exercise, I could do a few things. I could wait, I could feel that hard shell in my mouth. What is the actual shape I'm feeling? What does it taste like? It's sweet, right? It is, and then the texture changes. When a hard candy shell, M&M, for example, dissolves, then, then there's a different taste. The chocolate begins to actually come into your mouth. It's a whole experience, which we normally don't experience. Try a little mindfulness, even during these times of isolation. Try like just having, if you're in the middle of the day, saying what I'm giving to myself is a snack and I'm going to eat it mindfully. I'm going to actually slow it down. I'm not just eating it on my way to the next thing that I have to do. So just a quick thing to think about. Measure your stress. I love this guy. He's a little stressed because he has to wear a sign that says, I ate Christmas. He kind of got into everything and everything's unwrapped and in various bits. When my kids were little, we had my brother-in-law for some reason thought it would be a really good idea to give us a large boned golden hair retriever puppy. The puppy ate Christmas every day. I think there's somewhere still in my house floating around a large group of physically challenged Barbie dolls and Ken dolls. But what causes our stress? Is it things like, in this case, we see the dog is being punished, but what is it that we're doing to ourselves? Is our stress created from outside? I've applied to 600 jobs and have gotten no response. Is it internal that I'm telling myself that I am no good, or that, I am allowing myself to get on the despair train of it will never, ever change, the catastrophizing and the upset. Look, you want the psychological definition of stress. Lazarus, he is the one who started this. So this is the quote for what stress is. But it arises when we perceive that we cannot adequately cope with the demands being made on us, or with the demands being, or with the threats to our well-being. So it's like demand exceeds capacity. So not a hard concept. It increases our level of alertness. We perceive it as pressure and strain and urgency. And, with the holidays, with our friend who ate the holidays, is there urgency? It's funny, always around the holidays, I hear people just so miserable because they've created some fantasy about the way it should look. How do we know we're stressed? Well, it's like porn, right? And I know it when I see it, right? What is it? But we have other things that we know. If we get anxious, we get irritable, we can feel lonely, we can feel worthless, we're blaming everybody, or sometimes just blaming ourselves. We can be hostile, we can be aggressive with our friends, with our family. We can have emotional outbursts and we can have crying. How do we prevent stress? I don't, no matter what, it's about realistic time management. What can I do in a day? What can I do, whether you're working, whether it's the weekend? I am famous for telling myself things like, I can do the following 17 errands and I can get them done in a certain amount of time. And the reality is I'm not, because I'm not accounting for traffic. I'm not accounting for whatever I have to go. I mean, people, when they're late to when they're late for appointments, when I actually saw people in person, my favorite was one person who said to me, Dr. Braverman, I'm running late. I'm really sorry. I hit traffic. The GPS said it was 20 minutes to your office. They were coming from Delaware up 95, and I hit traffic, and I left 20 minutes ago. So I left myself plenty of time. Really? Have you ever driven to Philadelphia? When on 95 is there ever A, not traffic? B, it was 20 minutes to get from point A to point B. What did they forget? They forgot they have to park the car. They have to, get the ticket, park the car. If they think that they're going to circle the block 11 times in Center City, Philadelphia to find a space, bless, but that's another, I don't know, 10 to 20 minutes to try to find a spot. Then if you did, you have to walk from that spot or from the parking place to my office. You have to check in, which, by the way, whenever I tell people, when I told people then in the email, it always said, give yourself at least 15 minutes for the check-in. And so, but we do that all the time. Why did they only leave themselves 20 minutes? They weren't actually being rude to me. They left themselves 20 minutes because they wanted to work to the last minute so they didn't have to take extra time off of work. And because they'd already been taking a lot of time off of work for medical appointments. So it's easy to tell myself the story, you're so rude and you don't care about my time, but had to back up. From them, they were so stressed out by the time they walked in my office, they were vibrating. Fortunately, I didn't have somebody immediately after them and I was able to, see them and everything was fine. But the reality is it could have been gone the other way. And so their stress level was enormous. You have to learn how to say no, but nicely. And not only just to others, but to yourself. Like, no, I'm not going to get that all done today. We have to share responsibility and not just say, I'm the only one that can do this. Routine is really critical these days. Even if you don't like routine, routine is a really good thing, particularly for any of you who are job searching and not working at the moment. Not that routine is actually a way to help improve mood. Do it as a challenge for even 5 days and tell me if it makes a difference or not. You can take control where you can and accept where you can't. Sleep, I have to say, sleep is the most underrated tool. You can come and see me for, I don't know, half a dozen therapy sessions, or you can actually make sure you're getting some sleep. So that means not watching TV till whenever. It is learning that, for me, that not to listen to any of the political news right before going to sleep, because then I can't turn my mind off. It's learning to what it means to you. I will be a great advocate always for, bedtime routines. It worked as a kid. It works now. Brushing your teeth, washing your face, cueing your body that it is time for sleep. And then nobody's going to read you 2 storybooks at night, but maybe you listen to an audio book, or maybe you read because that's better. If you're on Facebook or Instagram or some sort of social media, for a lot of people, it's, first of all, the screen, the light reacts in the brain to say more wakefulness than sleepiness. And the second thing is we then get into the everybody's life is better than mine and all of that. Eat healthy, think of it as fuel. I'm not talking about diet. I'm talking about thinking about how you fuel your body, and don't just caffeinate to cope with life. So tempting, but don't. Think about exercise. I am not talking again about, beach body, whatever that is. I'm talking about doing something that means movement. For all of us, we have to find, what's your jam? I have a friend of mine who started at the beginning of the pandemic, just turning on music and dancing for 30 minutes. She ended up having a friend who said, I want to do that too. She is now the DJ, and there are about a half dozen of them. She doesn't like to exercise, but she'll dance for 30 minutes. I would rather have somebody torture me in like boot camp than have to dance for 30 minutes. I like to dance, but I don't want to dance for 30 minutes. You got to find what works for you. If you've got a dog, they love when you like to walk. So, make an excuse for the dog if that gets you out the door. Think about relaxation techniques. We don't have the time for me to go into them, but there are plenty out there. Make reasonable changes and make them over time. We don't, The Golden Gate Bridge doesn't get painted in a day. And I always think of it as an apt metaphor because when they finish finally painting it, what do? They have to start all over again. It's taken so much time. Choose what to let go. And sometimes even the thought forgive and forget, it doesn't work for everything, but sometimes it's not a bad thing to think about. So, let go of what we imagine. This is how, I imagine I'm going to be at the end of the day with my partner. Okay, I'm not blonde and yeah, but this is how we actually feel, so this is what my partner walks into. Do you like sort of the 50s motif? Similarly, am I picturing my partner? Is this Lester Holt as a younger man? No. But what my partner is probably, could come home and look like this. Although that's not. Let's take a stress snapshot. Where are your stresses? Stop for a minute and just for yourself, think, where are my biggest stresses? Are you like my patient where it's about, work related, not hers, but others? Is it about, financial issues? Where does the stress come from? Because how do you know how to begin to work on it if you can't even identify where it begins? We set realistic goals. I mean, most of us are not Martha Stewart and setting, and for an ex-con, she's doing all right, setting the table and it looks like that. For most of us, if I actually put a plate and a fork on the table, woo, winner, winner. So what does it have to be? Um, you know, what does everything I have to do look picture perfect? Do I have to Instagram my life that anything is only perfect? Or this is what it looks like when I actually wrap presents. It's not my forte. Meanwhile, my friend who dances, I mean, her gifts, this is like, that would be her worst wrapping nightmare. She's scary good. So one of the big questions, and if I give you nothing else, this is my favorite tool. I give it to every patient I see, usually the first time I see them, is start asking yourself the question, is this fact or is this fiction? What am I telling myself? If, my patient that was worried about her husband, I said, is it a fact that he's never going to get a job, or is that something you've made up? I actually, just because I couldn't find mine in a cute little picture, I actually say, is it a fear or is it a fact? Most of the time it's fear. It's not fact-based. And be aware of comparatitis. One of the things that we lose our ability for is to enjoy the moment, is if we're so busy looking at what everybody else has. I love this picture of these two kids. This little boy has what looks like a very nice ice pop, right? Or to go all Brit on you, an ice lolly. Doesn't that sound even better than an ice pop? But here's his friend next to him who has this ginormous soft serve ice cream cone. Is he enjoying his ice pop? No. He's looking at what he doesn't have. So, sometimes it stinks that you don't get this, but does that mean we can't enjoy what we have? Are we comparing apples and oranges sometimes when we're comparing things? Or what does the comparatitis mean? I always like Teddy Roosevelt, who wrote, "Comparison is the thief of joy." It's one of those quotes where you kind of go, yeah, that's wise. And it is, because sometimes when we're comparing, I can't tell you how many people talk about being on social media and needing to turn it off because they see everybody else's lives and feel terrible about their own. And, how sad is that? I really talk a lot about reframing. How do you change your image? Am I going to do do I look at stress as this ginormous boulder that's just about to, I'm using everything I can to hold that stress at bay, and I'm sure this person's arms are shaking and their legs are shaking, because how long can you hold something like that at bay? But what you need to do is take a stick of dynamite. I always like to think of, anybody remember the Road Runner cartoons? and that nice cartoonish roadrunner stick of dynamite, and I stick it into that big boulder, and I go kaplooey and I blow it up into a pile, because I can move a pile of rocks. I cannot move a boulder. How do I choose to look at what I'm facing? If I, for my patient with the pregnancy that's not going, that is a problem pregnancy, I invited her, instead of saying I have to look at 4 months of anxiety and worry, and say, can we just tackle today? Let's talk about, have you figured out what you're making for dinner? She's got a little one at home, so she is definitely making dinner because she has to feed her kid. What do you want to do? What do you want to watch tonight on TV? I know you'd like to watch TV. All of a sudden, we're taking the boulder, we're trying to dismantle it. When do you see the doctor next? Can you listen to the doctor's uh, advice? How do we ramp down? How do we blow up the boulder of medical worry? Oh, well, wait a minute. What do I have control over? If I have something that I'm worried about, I can go to the ER. I've got a good medical team. I said, by the way, do you know if you go to the ER as a pregnant person, do you stay in the ER? Generally not. You get whisked up to labor and delivery. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. That made me feel better. How do you break it down? What are the steps I can take? Um, so remember to use your mini stress busters, the breath and shoulders, being present and mindful. Look at, what you should focus on. The things that matter is a large circle, the things you can control. Maybe this case, it happens to be a bigger circle. More often it's not. But there's always, I love Venn diagrams, there's always that shaded spot. I am just a confirmed geek, I'm sorry. But, think Venn diagrams. There had to be a reason why you went to school when you were younger and had to sit through those math classes. So what I'm going to focus on are both the things that matter and the things I can control. And sometimes, quite frankly, if we're really that overwhelmed, I'll have people sit down, write these two things and fill in, what are the things that matter to me? What are the things I can control? Put it all down and then move it into the circle. Which one does it belong in and where does it overlap? Are you present? Are you always anticipating the future? That's what mindfulness is for. Where are you right now? I realize you've had to listen to me drone on after a very long day, but are you already are you checking out? Are you answering work emails or whatever while we're talking? I mean, I am guiltier the most with that. I'm telling myself I can listen to a lecture and multitask at the same time. And invariably, I have no idea what the person said. I can't. Sometimes there's a limit to how much you can multitask. And all I do is stress myself out, because particularly if it happens to be a colleague that's giving the lecture and I have to actually talk about it afterwards. What are your top 3 stresses? What do you do? So what do you do to manage those stresses? Answer these questions to yourself. What tools do you use? And what are the messages you're telling yourself? Those are 3 really good questions to hold yourself accountable for management. I always like this saying, I used to have a handle on life, but it broke, which is the way I think a lot of us are feeling at the moment. Remember, there are effects of stress, and if you start being able to cue into what your stress symptoms are, do you break out? I'm not talking about maskne, but are you actually breaking out because you're so stressed out? Does your stomach, is it your headaches? We all have tells, right? For many of us, the tell is, we know how our bodies react. What's real? What's the stress we're sort of making up that because we're anticipating? What are your stress busters, and what action are you willing to take to reduce and prevent your stress? Remember, the effects of stress are many. It's physiological and physical. That it is not just in your head. It literally can be in your gut. It can be in your head. Headaches is a common one, in all fairness. Emotional, we just get worn down. Cognitive, the effects of stress often is we are not being able to concentrate on things. We're distracted. Behaviorally, we stop taking care of ourselves. We're more reckless. We're prone to having, can be prone to accidents just because we are being not careful. Health, there's plenty of research out there about the impacts of stress on health. Definitely, if you're in a relationship, whether it be an intimate relationship, romantic, not just sex, people, but an intimate emotional relationship with a partner, it definitely can take its toll. We withdraw, we have no time for them, but it's also relational to friends and family. And what do we do? Are you pushing people away? How are you handling it? And certainly we see stress impacts work performance, and in what direction. It does not improve. So in terms of the health, self-care, taking some water, I sometimes feel that that's the way I feel in the morning. Sometimes I just want to put something on my head, and that means I did not doing the things I was telling you to do. It increases colds and flus, pain, headaches. It puts us at risk for certain diseases: diabetes, type 2, heart disease, stomach ulcers, irritable bowel syndrome, obesity. It also decreases our immune functioning with chronic stress, and it also wound healing. It is not good for. So if I wasn't convincing you before, I brought out the big guns and said, hey, look at all these things. Now, in all fairness, colds and flu are way down because, oh, right, we don't leave our houses. But in the before times, remember how if you're more stressed out, you just felt like you got sick more easily? Um, Emotional, all of these things: depression, anxiety, feeling well, irritability, here it comes again, anger, frustration. It can lower our self-esteem. It can have this snowball effect. In other words, these emotional reactions are reactive to that initial stress response. Think about yourself. What are you going to put in the other that you've noticed for yourself? In terms of cognitive functioning, breaking it down, not only is it decreased attention, but concentration, short-term memory. How many of us have problems with that on a good day? Now we're going to add to the stress level and affect that more. Distractibility. I think, as a nation, we've become incredibly distractible through this. We have that fuzzy thinking, that feeling, that fuzzy thinking, difficult planning, difficulty being logical and thinking through problems, and difficulty with multitasking, which seems to be the requirement of life in the 2020s. And just even having that constant deer in the headlights feeling of just what's going on. Behaviorally, we definitely decreased energy. We can increase things that give us short-term gain and long-term loss, like smoking. We cut out sleep because we want the distractibility. I want to watch the late show, because I just don't want to let my head go when I try to put my head down on the pillow. So then we talk about strategies for sleep management. Less healthy eating, no, the cheese puffs are not in the meal of champions. Less exercise. Don't get me wrong, a few cheese puffs are great, but an entire, the jugs from Costco, no. We tend to increase alcohol use or just recreational drug use. And I always say to everybody, what are you drinking or smoking or eating or whatever your mode is? What's the goal? Is it to turn everything off? Is it to relax? Are you doing it because you don't know how else to manage the stress? And sometimes we just keep pushing and pushing, which gets us in deeper and deeper. Relational, we can increase our arguments, and that has to do with irritability. If you're withdrawing socially, take a look at what that's all about and what do you do for yourself. It can impact sexual performance. We know that stress lowers libido. It also can then get into that cycle of performance anxiety. I'm not because I have lower libido or I just have low energy, then I am not the sexual partner I once was. For those of you who are not partnered, if you're not having any sexual interest on your own, that can also be another sign. And in terms of work, if this is how you are before work and this is how you are after work, which, let's face it, we've all been there. What we find is the more we get stressed, the harder it is, the less we are productive. It's not that old, just push yourself and flog yourself harder and harder and you'll get more out of it. Often it's walk away from it, come back, and then later that day or the next day, we are actually much more productive. And instead of something that might have taken half a day, can take an hour instead, or something like that. The increased irritability and anger also comes out at work. We tend to be less flexible with all the demands that get put on us. People have increased absences. For those of you in manager positions, you'll see employee attrition, and there are definitely increased costs to the employee, your job satisfaction, career management, and promotion, and these all in turn are increased costs to the employer. So where are you now? Are you in your head? Are you in tomorrow? Are you 3 months from now? Every once in a while, just stop, take a moment. Where are you now? So how do you cope with the stress now? We're coming to the end, guys. It's strategies. What's your strategy? What are you doing? Is there any one thing you're willing to even say, I'm going to do this to manage my stress and my mental health and my mood and all of these things? What's working for you? What's healthy? What's not healthy? What am I doing that, maybe isn't the best? By the way, these nasty little Cadbury eggs, I remembered after I bought this bag, I have no willpower. So what is my strategy? I'm not buying any more bags because I clearly have zero self-control with them. I'm pretty good most of the time, but these little suckers, they undo me. And particularly when I'm stressed, because what do I tell myself? I deserve this. I'm just going to, what does it matter? And I'm being very lighthearted about it, but I'm not in overall, because all of this in the end affects mood. If you are feeling down, substitute any of this. This is sort of like the game we play with Chinese fortune cookies. We add in bed. Here's the different at the end of the fortune, right? You haven't played that? Okay. With these, everything I've been talking about tonight, take out the word stress and put in the word mood. Anxiety, depression, all of these things, all of these are the same strategies. I pick stress because people tend to be less stressed than when I use things like depression and anxiety words. But take a look, what's working for you, what's not working for you, what might help. I will put in an unabashed plug for mental health professionals. I know it is next to impossible to find somebody these days, but we're out there. And, there are ways to get in touch with somebody. It doesn't just have to be you. Partner up. If you don't have health insurance and you're really finding a hard time doing this, at least buddy up with a friend and say, all right, let me talk out what my plan is for myself, and talk to somebody. Not talking is like putting the kettle on the stove and you don't put a whistle on it. You know what happens when it boils long enough? Kaboom, right? It explodes. You got to let the steam off somewhere. Where's your whistle? So I will encourage you to start today, this week. Don't wait for when life is less busy or when I'm going to be less stressed, because, oh, right, that doesn't usually happen, right? Self-care is, take care of yourself, because self-care is not being selfish or irresponsible. Think about your choices. Think about what beliefs you're feeding yourself and your priorities. And I will just say, think about your perspective. If you're going through life feeling like you're blindfolded with a target on your head, maybe it's time to change the image. This is somebody who has no control, no agency, no efficacy in their life. And maybe that's like the boulder that we saw. You can change the image. So think about it. This is life in general. This is our plan. We start off every day with our little friend on top on the bicycle. and I'm going to start my day, and I'm just going to go straight along, and I'm going to pass the checkered flag at the end. But reality is, this is what most days are like for us, or certainly the months, the year that we've just experienced. It's not a straight path, and there are lots of things, and you have to climb the line and get over the boulders at the bottom of the pit. And oh, right, there's a forest to go through. And then I've got to take, oh, at least I got a cable car here. And then I have to get on the ship, and I have to cross all this water. And then I have to go up over a bridge. And finally, oh, I thought I'm there. Oh, look, I can see that. But no, oh gosh, I have to deal with clouds and rain. And oh, I have to get all the way down here only to climb up until I finally get across. So that's a little bit more with what we're dealing with right now. But what's the image in all of this? Oh, there is an end. And I'm not starting off here saying I can't possibly get to the end of my day, because I told myself it's going to be just a cakewalk, or a cake ride, I guess, in this case. What I'm telling myself is there's, okay, I'm going to break down and I'm going to take each obstacle. I'm not going to worry about that stupid ladder, which looks really rickety and scary to me. I'm just going to figure out, how do I get from here to here? And when I get here, I'm going to figure out how to get from here through the forest, and to the other side. So I'll leave you with a dog picture, just because dog pictures make me happy. And since we saw the poor guy who ate Christmas, here's a guy who's doing very well with his mental health, and seems to be just fine. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up, because also good self-care is, after an hour of listening to me, that's plenty. And I'll just turn it back to all of you. If anybody has a question, happy to answer it. I'll stop the screen share, and we'll go back to all of us again.
So we did get a couple of questions in there, but first, thanks again for coming out and doing this and talking to us tonight. The first question is, what happens when another person brings stress or anxiety into your world? What do you do when their unwillingness to work on their stress impacts you and your stress?
Yeah, well, this brings to mind the old therapist joke. How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is only one, but the light bulb has to want to change. So, good example of, here's a light bulb that doesn't want to change, and they are bringing, and you can't motivate somebody else to change. What you can do is, try to have that communication of it, if they are in a place where they can listen to you, to say, listen, friend, I know, if I'm putting myself in your shoes, I understand why, you've got all these things and you're really stressed. And if you really want to do the couples therapist trick, and by the way, the couple can be a friend, it can be a partner, is to say, let me, putting myself in your shoes, what I see is, did I get that right, or am I missing something? So not presuming the other person. If they're willing to play ball with you, they will say, no, that's pretty accurate, or no, you're missing blah, 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 word vomit of stress words and stuff like that, right? And then then you can, you at least have a little bit more of an accurate view of what's going on with them. But then you can say, I'd like you to put yourself in my shoes, and and see if they can sort of do that same back to you. If that feels like way advanced homework for you, the other thing I will say is simply, sometimes when you run out of cope and somebody is stressing you out, look for ways to take time out. Of, sometimes if you're living in the same place, if it's a roommate, just saying, look, I really want to be there and support you. I'm getting a little overwhelmed myself. Let's have a 15-minute rule. Let's talk for 15 minutes, and then then we move on to something else. So that way you reassure your other person that they're really stressed, and I need to know that I can get this out, but you're not feeling like you're writing a blank check, either emotionally or time wise. That's one thing you can do. The other is just simply, if you are drowning because they are pulling you down, they teach you that in Red Cross. When somebody is drowning and you swim to help them and you try to rescue them, and they will not calm down, and they are pulling you down and going to drown you too. What does the Red Cross teach you to do? Swim away. Get yourself out of that situation. If you are, unless you're in a studio apartment, and even then there's a bathroom, and get yourself the People magazine or the equivalent on your phone to read and take your, even if it's 5 minutes. That's like, I need to do this. I need to like read about ridiculous royals or whatever it might be, and give yourself some space. And you just break it down. It feels like a boulder. How do you at least knock off a few chips to move those?
All right. The other question we got in is, when your response to stress is to shut down, how do you advise working through that?
Again, that non-judgmental brain, that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes we do need to shut down. It's protective, right? I'm too overwhelmed. I'm not going to process this now. And you know what? I won't do a good job. So better to walk away and come back. Anybody who's ever been in any kind of communication and relationship with another human being knows that sometimes it's better not to talk about it right now. Everybody just cools down, gets a little different perspective. If you find you're shutting down all the time, then remember our Venn diagram. What can you control? What can't you control? If I feel like all the things that are making me shut down are in my out of control, that are not in my control, what I do have control over is picking one of those things and moving it into the shaded area. What do I want to pick? How? So does it mean, so many people are like, I'm done with Zoom. I don't want to talk on the phone, but how else am I going to see another human being? All right, so don't Zoom every night. Decide like, okay, Friday nights are my Zoom night. I got to engage with the world. I'm getting a little creepy just, being here alone by myself and, building, I don't know, house of cards, if anybody even does that anymore. So it's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to do a Zoom on a, Friday night, or you know what, I'm going to actually write a letter. I can't tell you how many people started writing letters during the pandemic. It's actually lovely. And saying, it's a little bit like a letter in a bottle, and I'm going to send it out into the sea. What else can I do? Maybe my engagement is I go out, and if you're comfortable and double masked, I go out and I make sure that once a day I do go and get myself a beverage. I don't care whether you drink it or not. Let's go and get yourself a beverage and see other humans. And maybe I'm not ready to have conversations, and certainly not with people we don't know at the moment so much. But I need to make sure that I'm not, that a week doesn't go by and I realize I never stepped outside my door. Now, maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration for most of you, but it's not for people I'm talking to in therapy. So if you're shutting down, what is it that you are willing to, to do to re-engage? Don't swing for the fences. I know it's spring and baseball is starting, and I'm not a baseball person, but I love that idea of when you step up to bat and you swing as hard as you can because you want to knock it over the fence and get the home run. Most of the time, bad strategy. Just like, how about if I step on the plate and try to like connect with the ball? I even used a sports metaphor analogy.
A very timely and a very accurate one at that. That was good. So again, thank you for coming out and doing this for us tonight. And I also want to apologize for the folks who had issues with the Eventbrite link. Apparently the confirmation email, the link in there only worked for about half of the folks. So for those of you who started late, don't worry, I'll be sending this recording to you in the next couple of days. And for those of you who weren't able to make it in or just seeing the recording, apologies for that. And with that, I think we're good to call it a night. So thank you again to Dr. Braverman, and thank you to all of you for joining us. And we hope to see you next month for Show and Share, which is free and should be a lot of fun. All right, everybody, have a good night.
All right, take care.